peace and a path to prosperity, I believe that America's best days can still be ahead. And I want to lead us forward. Join me now in the Reid Revolution. Wednesday morning, the Reid Revolution. Very glad that you are with us. Hope you're following us on both of our Facebook pages, on X, on Rumble, where else? TikTok. We're trying to be everywhere on social media. So whatever form you follow to get your news and information, I hope you're tracking us. I'm John Reid, and glad that you're with us here. If you want to send us a note about ideas for the show, or if you'd like to be one of our sponsors, the reidrevolution@gmail.com is the way to reach producer Dan and me, the reidrevolution@gmail.com. So lots to talk about as we get started on this Wednesday morning. Of course, the video out from the horrible, horrible story about Savannah Guthrie's mom, Nancy Guthrie. Thank goodness someone finally was able to get to the archives that had the Ring video, the camera that is on the front of a lot of houses now. I mean, who knows how this stuff works, right? You've got a Ring camera on the front of your house. You can watch it on your phone in many cases. You can watch it on a monitor in your home. I was unaware that this stuff was archived, maybe forever, for a short period of time, but it's only taken, 10 days for investigators to gain access to whatever archival method held the video of the intruder showing up at the house and being able to access that and show us that this was a pretty planned thing, it appears. Now, whether it was a kidnapping, gotta believe it was a kidnapping, or whether it was a robbery that turned into a kidnapping, the person who arrives at the house has got a gun, has got gloves on to prevent fingerprints from being left behind. They've got a mask on. I mean, I don't know, not being a cop, not being an investigator, I don't know if this is a pro or not, but it's clearly somebody who has thought through what they're doing. And it's chilling to me to see this, especially this poor lady, 84 years old. I mean, what is she supposed to do? Seriously, what is she supposed to do? Well, I'll tell you, and this is not a judgment on the Guthrie family. I have no idea whether they have weapons or, I don't know what their stance is on this, and it really doesn't matter. But what their political stance is. This is why, no matter what age you are, if you're going to be in a home by yourself, who could have predicted this? 2 or 3 weeks ago, if you'd suggested this, I think most people would have been like, what are you talking about? This kidnappings in modern America, who has to deal with this? We are entering an era where Democrats are making concessions on a regular basis to criminals. Let's assume that it's not for the worst reasons to try to collapse the society. I personally think that's the ultimate motivation by a lot of these think tanks is, and looking at the history of the last century, you create a society with a great deal of turmoil, a great deal of violence, a great deal of crime. You make the public very unhappy. You retard the economy, and you have dependent, scared people. And guess what? They will reach for something new, and they will reach for the solution that's provided to them. The irony is they often reach for the solution that's provided to them by the people who have actually caused all the problems. And I think that's what's happening. But let's put that aside. That theory that I have, I think is accurate, but put it aside and assume that Democrats are attempting to right a wrong in the way the justice system operates here. And I do think there are legitimate things that we should look at, and behaviors by prosecutors and investigators, and the money imbalance. You get into a conflict with the government and you have no money, you're screwed. I know some people don't like it when I put it that way, but I need to make it clear. If you get charged with something and you don't have any money and you're not plugged into the establishment and nobody's willing to come ride to your rescue to help you legally, you're in big trouble, because you're up against a group of people who have unlimited money, who are determined for a variety of reasons. One, if they really think you did it, they want to put you in jail. But then you've got the political component of this, that a lot of these prosecutors, it's a numbers game for them. They don't want a loss on their record, like a basketball team. They don't want a losing season here, and that's a problem. And it's one of the reasons when you hear me talk about the culture of the United States being lost, the best parts of the culture of the United States being lost, um, you got to take that seriously. If the commitment to factual truth and to justice and a basic moral compass of right and wrong, which includes not bearing false witness against your neighbor and being committed to chasing the truth and finding the truth wherever it leads you, if that is no longer a part of this and it's political payoffs or it's just a motivation by prosecutors to score a win for them by putting you in jail, we've lost something. Now, I'm not delusional. I'm not Pollyanna. There have been abuses probably from the very beginning of the country in the judicial system. So I'm not, and don't for a second think that I am not aware of abuses against minorities, especially black men in the past. I'm not excusing it. I'm not pretending it didn't happen. It did. We know it did. And it's incumbent upon us in our era to make sure that we don't allow that against anybody. White, black, male, female, gay, straight, Muslim, Christian, Jew. We should be committed to obeying the law and not harming other people in our society. Do you hear me when I say that? Because I think some people question whether that's the Republican position or not. And I can't speak for every Republican, but I will tell you directly every single time that I am not out to have an axe to grind or do harm to anybody in our society. And I want us to have a commitment in the justice system where everybody is treated fairly with a blindness. There's a reason the lady justice is wearing a blindfold, is so that we don't allow our biases or other assessments of people to influence the verdict in a specific case. Can you prove that the person did something wrong beyond a shadow of a doubt or not? And I think all of that is evaporating right in front of our face, shockingly. At the same time, the Democrats make what they consider, or at least what they're trying to sell as reforms, instead of being harsh with criminals, people that we know committed the crime. There's not a question. We know they committed a crime. It's not just my opinion. It's not circumstantial. We know they committed a crime. We are bending over backwards for some reason. I think it's very foolish to cater to these people, to make the terms of their incarceration less than they would have been. That's a mistake. It's a form of injustice against the victims that we know exist, whether it's, Mangione murdering a man by shooting him in the back on a New York City street because he's the CEO of a company. I mean, there's no question he did that. We know he did it. And I would ask you, is there any explanation that would make you say, well, that's okay? I mean, the only thing I can think of, and this is not the situation here, would be if this man had personally abused him or a member of his family. And even then, we can't condone cold-blooded murder in the streets. We just can't. You got to take it into court and try to adjudicate this in court. You can't go killing people in the streets because you don't like them. Or, I mean, even if they've done something wrong to you, that cannot become the new standard in the United States. But what we're doing in the case of Mangione, taking the death penalty off the table, is that we're sending a signal to him that he's gotten away with it. We're allowing someone who commits a crime that should cross every line for all of us to stay alive. And just because you don't see the person doesn't mean that they're not there and that they're not continuing to cause trouble. You're just shifting the trouble to the people who have to deal with him in prison. How'd you like to be the prison guard making what? I don't know, $50,000, $60,000 a year. I don't know what prison guards, man. I'm sure it's not a lot of money. How would you like to be the prison guard guarding someone who has already demonstrated they will kill someone in cold blood? And in theory, they're not getting out of prison. So what do they have to lose? The second you let your guard down, they'll kill you too. They'll attack you too. Is that that's a practical thing with the people that we are asking to enforce the law and to incarcerate individuals. But the larger point is that we as a society are sending a signal to everybody out there that we're not serious. We really don't value peace and justice. We are confused. We're morally corrupt and confused people if we cannot draw a line, make it very clear what we won't tolerate, and then I'll be honest with you, execute people who cross that line. Not people that there's a question. I am very aware of the malfeasance of some people in the system, whether they be, I don't think it's widespread, but whether it's a police officer, an investigator, a prosecutor, even a judge on occasion. I mean, there are people who will do the wrong thing, and we need to protect individual life from that type of malfeasance. But when we know without a doubt that the person has committed a heinous crime, what was at one point a capital crime in our society, murdering an innocent person, it is really a bad reflection on us that we don't have the spine and the moral certitude to eliminate that person from our society. And the end result is that we tell everybody that we don't really care. We don't have guts. We don't really have a moral compass. And that, quite frankly, if you kill somebody, yeah, you might be locked up, and that might be unpleasant. I mean, some people get locked up and it doesn't seem to faze them at all, but it might be unpleasant. But in the end, especially with the new Democrat proposals that we see across the country and here in Virginia, where Democrats have taken control again, you see this effort to let people out of prison sooner and faster than ever before, with some sort of delusional belief that just because you're locked up for a couple of months, a couple of years, a couple of decades, that what, you're going to come out and you're a reformed person. In fact, I would argue, and I think the data backs this up, that most of the people who are locked up for an extended period of time, especially after a violent crime, come out and they are just as dangerous, if not more so, than when they went into the prison. Do you hear that? Are you aware of what's happening? You can kill a cop. The kind of thing where if it could be proven that it was actually you, you would get the death penalty just a few decades ago. Now they're releasing cop killers into the neighborhood that I live in here in Central Virginia. And there is not a universal condemnation of that mindset. That's a problem for us. That sets the stage for extensive violence and criminal activity all across the United States, in Virginia certainly, but all across the United States, because we're telling people we're not serious about condemning crime. And no one knows at this point the full details of what has happened to this poor lady, Savannah Guthrie's mom. I mean, it just makes me sick to my stomach to see someone who's in their 80s go through whatever it is. We don't even know what she's really gone through, for God's sake. It's a horrible, horrible situation. And I think if you've got any kind of moral compass or just empathy for anybody, especially for senior citizens, does this get your attention here? And I would be interested in looking at the data to find out how frequently this type of kidnapping happens. I'm told that it is not frequent, but you know where it is frequent? In Central and South America. And I can say that with great confidence, having spent a great deal of time in this part of the world. This is the type of crime that occurs frequently, where criminal gangs or individuals who recognize that someone has money, they are emboldened to think that they can kidnap the son or the daughter or the husband or the wife or the parents or the brother-in-law, someone in the family, and hold that person for ransom, for a pretty large ransom. And it has gotten so bad in Mexico, to single out Mexico. I'm sure Mexico isn't happy about this, but it's gotten so bad that it is routine. And the person, if you can't or won't pay the ransom, they kill them. They kill them. Uh, you know, I hope that it's still kind of shocking to you as an American that this is happening in the United States. It should be shocking to you. And the danger is that we are creating a system, we're creating a moral code, we're creating a culture where this is going to increase. Uh, Part of it is that we're importing people from parts of the world where this is the norm for them. And I'm so sorry to say it, but when you import people who have been around a culture where kidnapping, murder, stabbings, robberies are commonplace, don't be surprised if that's what you see in your own community. Just like I'm going to say it, I don't care who it makes angry. As a gay man, I am not enthusiastic about importing people from from other parts of the world who would like to kill me because of their attitude towards gay men or lesbian women. Forgive me, but I'm a lookout for my own best interest. I don't care about saving the rest of the world if that means that every moment of every day when I am outside of my house or even in my house, I have to worry about somebody hating me so much and believing that their religion gives them permission to kill me. I don't like that. I don't know how you feel about it. I don't know whether you feel the same threat for some element of your life. You probably should. You probably should, because if you're an infidel, you may be on the target list here. But I know I'm the number one target for these people to kill. And I am not going to voluntarily submit to that or make my life miserable going forward because you're delusional and you've never traveled outside of the state of Virginia or outside of the United States and you don't know what's coming. This is not a good thing. And what has happened with Nancy Guthrie should be alarming to everyone. We will find out whether this is a native-born American who has kidnapped her or was trying to rob the house, or whether there's, some gang connection or the origin. I suspect at some point we'll find out the real solution, and I'm not going to prejudge it because I try to be a fair person. But it is not out of line or irresponsible to sound the alarm, to say we're making terrible mistakes led by Democrats in the way we manage our justice system. These are not these are not reforms of the justice system. They are catering to the criminal element in our society, and it makes us all at risk. And there are going to be a lot of people who are hurt going forward. Our immigration policy puts us all at risk, and there's going to be a lot of suffering, some of which you haven't even heard of in the last couple of years. And there's a long list of people that have been hurt that no one seems to want to pay attention to. This is a problem. And we need responsible, sober, thoughtful leaders who don't have an axe to grind, who are not bigots, who are not motivated by hate, but can read a data chart and recognize that things have to be done to protect the good citizens, the ones who get up and go to work, who don't harm other people. That's my priority, to protect myself and my family, but in the larger sense, to make sure that we're making decisions that protect the people who actually want to live in a peaceful society, not to coddle the people who very clearly indicate with their own behavior that they want to hurt other folks. Let that be part of the lesson of what's been happening with the Nancy Guthrie story, however it ends and whatever is revealed. You should be alarmed and go get a gun and learn how to shoot it in case you're the 84-year-old who has the door kicked in at your house next. You should be worried about that. I'm sorry to say. And the Democrats are largely responsible for it. I'm also sorry to say that. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk to Cleta Mitchell, who, as you know, if you listen to me on the radio for years, has been one of the leading thinkers and investigators on uh, election fraud. She's spent a lot of time in Georgia. I'm really curious what has been revealed in Georgia in the last few months, and does that vindicate people like Rudy Giuliani and, quite frankly, Donald Trump? I mean, is there a real indication now that there was extensive fraud in Georgia, and all of us who were told to shut up and not talk about it now should be talking about at least an evaluation of the new data? We'll talk about that when we return. We're not supposed to, but we're going to talk about it anyway because it's my show. We'll be back with more in just a moment on the Reid Revolution. You're back on this Wednesday morning on the Reid Revolution. I'm John Reid, and very glad you are with us. There's some subjects that we're not supposed to talk about, right? We're not supposed to talk about elections. You're not allowed to question what actually happened that election. Were the voter rolls accurate? We know now in the Commonwealth of Virginia that in the last presidential election in 2024, there were a couple of thousand names of people who self-identified as illegal immigrants in the Commonwealth who were on the voter rolls. And the governor at the time, Glenn Youngkin, the Republican, attempted to remove those names from the voter rolls, right? Isn't that what you would do if somebody doesn't have the right to vote under the current law, not making it up? Wouldn't you want to have clean rolls where the people who were listed were the ones who were legally able to vote? Even we know that's up to you. We're not one of those countries that fines you if you don't vote. We don't mandate your vote, but I would think we would want to have clean voter rolls. Well, the Democrats fought all the way to the United States Supreme Court not to allow any of those names to be removed from the voter rolls. Why? Why would you do that? If you want a fair election, if you want to make sure that it's one vote, one person, one time in one place, and it's verified, why would you fight over that? I mean, it just gives people like me ammunition to say, look, you really want to cheat. And I hate to tell you this, I think they really want to cheat. It's a regular thing. How do we fix that? Since the Democrats refuse to come up with any kind of compromise that would give everyone, Republican or Democrat, wherever you live around the country, confidence that the election results are normal. Cleta Mitchell has been working on these issues for a number of years. I used to talk to her regularly in my old job at the old radio station. I appreciate you joining us, Cleta. I caught a lot of hell for speaking to you on the radio. Some of the corporate types did not like the fact that I would have someone on who actually questioned election results. I found you to be very credible and thoughtful in what you were talking about. So I just want to tell you, I'm so glad to be free of that kind of oppression from some big company. And welcome to the Reid Revolution.
That sounds great to me. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
So we've got the SAVE Act, and I'm so encouraged that Republicans, in the last few months that they've got to get something done and have it codified and signed by the President of the United States, that they're taking action here. Tell me what the SAVE Act actually does and what you think the prospects are for getting it to the President's desk.
Well, our prospects are brighter than they've been ever. The U.S. House has twice in 2024 and again in 2025. The U.S. House has passed the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act is built around the principle that people should have to show documentary proof of U.S. citizenship in order to register to vote. And the reason it is required for Congress to take action is because Congress in 1993, Bill Clinton's premier signature first piece of legislation that he promoted and signed was the National Voter Registration Act, what we call motor voter.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's the federal statute that requires that all people who go to the DMV, the driver's license agency of their state, to get a driver's license, renew a driver's license, register a car, take any action at the driver's license agency in their state, that that their application for a driver's license has to be treated as an application to register to vote. And that's really, it does a lot more than that. That same law is responsible for the mess of our voter rolls, quite honestly, because of all the restrictions it puts on the states to keep them from cleaning voter rolls. But aside from that, it requires every state to accept and use a voter registration form developed by a federal agency. Mm-hmm. And in 2013, Arizona had enacted, its legislature had passed, it was signed into law, a new law that required people to show documentary proof of citizenship when they registered to vote. They've been trying since 2002 to get people to have to show that they were citizens in order to register to vote. But the Supreme Court ruled in 2013 in a lawsuit brought by a left-wing group that only Congress could change that form. The federal agency could change the form, or Congress could change the form, but it would have to come from the federal government. So when people say, well, this is federalism and, we think the states ought to control elections, well, that's all well and good. But as I explained when I went to Mike Lee and Chip Roy to author a bill on this subject 2 years ago, I said, Congress broke it. Only Congress can fix it. Mm-hmm. So the SAVE Act, as passed twice by the House, would require that when people register to vote, they have to show that they are citizens. Instead of just checking a box, they have to actually prove it.
Now, so how do they prove it? I have a passport. I've traveled extensively, but I'm shocked how many people don't have a passport. I now have the verified driver's license with the little star, and I had to bring my birth certificate. And
yes,
there's a whole bunch of stuff, and they didn't even give it to me the first time. I had to go back a second time because I didn't have the 10-point checklist. Right. So what do you have to show in order to prove that you are a citizen?
Well, you have to show any of this. It's a whole list of documents that you can use: your birth certificate, a driver's license, a naturalization certificate if you are a citizen by virtue of naturalization. If you were born on Indian land, and a tribal certificate showing that you were born on Indian land in the United States. If you were born in the United States but now live overseas, but your parents are citizens. So there's a whole list of things that are used to prove that you're a U.S. citizen, and any one of those can be used. But you would have to prove it in order to be added to the voter rolls. And
you have to do that one time?
One time. Yes, one time. So that presumably when you move your registration to a different state, it would show that you were registered and that you are a citizen. Now, what Congress is now doing, what it decided that they're going to do this week, is to add to the SAVE Act that's already been passed, a voter ID requirement, so that now you would prove registration when you register. Prove citizenship when you register. Then you would have to show a photo ID when you vote to show that you are actually the person listed on the voter rolls. And it would also require, and whether you voted in person or by mail, you would have to have your photo ID. And it would list where that ID can come from, and it would narrow the sources that are now used. And it would change federal law, because now you can use a utility bill or a bank statement. That would no longer be allowed. You would have to show a photo ID to register to vote, whether you vote in person or by mail. And the third thing it would require is within 30 days after passage, after it was signed into law, every state would have to send its voter rolls to the Department of Homeland Security to run against the SAVE database to determine if there are any dead people or non-citizens on the rolls. And so those three things would make a huge difference in protecting the integrity of our elections.
People move around
that's
so
called
much.
The Save America Act. That's
Yeah.
called the Save America Act.
People move around so much in the country, and you just look at someone who, I'll use a Virginia example, someone who lives in Henrico County, where I live in the suburbs of the state capital of Virginia. Then the 18-year-old kid, 17-year-old kid goes off to college in Lynchburg or in Williamsburg or up in Northern Virginia, George Mason University. You pick. Is there a way to be clear and sure that that person votes one time in each election? Do we have a system in place in Virginia, certainly, but across the country that can verify that you're only voting in one place? I, as a business person, had apartments in a number of locations. At one point, I had a place in Richmond, a place in Washington, D.C., and an apartment in Midtown Manhattan. How do you keep up with that?
Well, that's a different area of the law. As I mentioned, the National Voter Registration Act has multiple parts, and the Save America Act only deals with voter registration to prove citizenship, voter ID, and comparing the state's voter rolls to the national database that shows it, that would determine or ascertain if there are any non-citizens on the rolls. There's another bill that was introduced 2 weeks ago in the U.S. House of Representatives called Make Elections Great Again. And that bill would really address some of the issues you're talking about. And we expect that bill to be coming forward in March. And that would deal with the problems of voter registration, the requirement for states to clean their voter rolls, the requirement that when someone goes to a different location, moves to a different jurisdiction, that they're automatically, that the Department of Motor Vehicles would automatically notify the election office where they're previously registered that they have relocated to a different jurisdiction. I mean, that's a much more comprehensive bill that would address a lot of the kinds of issues you're talking about. But remember, what you pointed out is a very serious challenge. And it would require states to work together across state lines to keep those voter rolls clean. But one of the biggest problems is that historically, it's been the federal laws that have kept states from being able to do the things that you're talking about, because the Democrats don't want any of those things done. Let's be very clear about this. Democrats oppose the Save America Act because they don't want only U.S. citizens to vote. Yeah. Every Democrat but 5 in 2024 and 1 Democrat in 2025 in the House of Representatives voted no, voted against.
And what's their argument? Is it that it's so difficult, hypothetically, for certain people, minorities, to get IDs? I just don't believe in the modern era that's true. I don't think you could live in this society without it. But
no, I mean, it's not true. They basically want, look, let's be very clear about something. Federal law today apportions the United States House of Representatives based on total population, not on citizen population.
Right.
And it allocates federal funds based on total population, not citizen population. So political power and federal dollars are handed out based on total population. There is every incentive in the world for states to cram as many illegals as they can into their states because they get more representation in the Congress and they get more federal money. If citizen population only were counted for purposes of apportioning the U.S. House, it's estimated that California would have lost an additional 7 to 10 U.S. House seats since 2010.
So can that change?
A vested interest. Yes, that can be changed. Congress has to change it.
Is there an appetite even in the Republican Party to do that?
Yes, that bill has been introduced. It's been voted on in the Senate. Every Republican voted yes. Every Democrat voted no. But this is a very big issue in our country. And most of our laws, our election laws and all, they were passed at a time. The National Voter Registration Act was signed into law in 1993. That's 33 years ago. I mean, the truth of the matter is that Nobody ever anticipated a time when we would have 20 million illegals and years of total disregard of our immigration laws. So we have to take these steps. But the Democrats oppose voter ID. They oppose. I went back yesterday and reread H.R. 1 that passed the House when the Democrats were in control in 2021 and 2022. It passed the House twice. Here are some of the things in the Democrats' bill. There are 36 states that require some form of voter ID. The Democrat passed bill would have forbidden the implementation or the use of any voter ID in any state and would have required that the states create a form where someone could just sign saying, I'm Cleta Mitchell. No ID, no proof, just sign it. They had in that bill a prohibition and said nobody asking for an absentee ballot can be required to prove identity before being given that absentee ballot. That was in the bill they passed.
Yeah.
And it would
and they know exactly what they're doing.
They know exactly what they're doing.
Abuse and cheating.
So when they say, oh, we're just trying to protect people, it has been proven in the states that have enacted voter ID that minority participation did not go down. It actually increased in the years after the voter ID provisions were put into law. So that is a complete fabrication. There's no evidence to support it. They want to cheat. Democrats are cheaters. They want to cheat. That's why they oppose these common sense provisions that 90% of the American people support. People support proof of citizenship to make sure only citizens vote. People support 85, 90%, including 70% of Democrats support voter ID, and they support comparing our voter rolls to citizenship data to make sure that there are no non-citizens on the rolls. So it's just a fight we have to have with the Democrats, but I think we need to make it very clear that what it is we're fighting about. We're fighting for integrity. They want to be able to cheat.
Yeah. They've got to own it, and I don't think there's any spin that can put a nice edge on that. Is this thing going through? We've got control for a few more months, and then I hate to tell you, I think it's over, and Trump's going to be holding on for dear life not to be tossed out of office. We got to do this now if it's going to happen.
We have to do it now. So here's what needs to happen. This week, the House of Representatives will bring the Save America Act to the floor. And hopefully we'll pass it. It is going to be put into a Senate bill, a bill that has already passed the Senate and has come over to the House. It is a Senate bill authored by Senator Rick Scott, and he's agreed to have his original bill stripped out, replaced with the content of the Save America Act, so that can go back to the Senate and then hopefully go straight to the Senate floor, not to go to committee. And then here we are, John, what needs to happen, and everybody's going to have to get involved in this to make the Senate have a talking filibuster, because the rules of the Senate are this. Once a bill comes over or is brought to the floor, the only reason they talk about the 60 votes to pass it, we don't need 60 votes to pass any bill. Treaties, yes, but not a bill like this, not a piece of legislation. It's just that nobody wants to make the other side have to go through the two debate rule. Every Democrat senator, because they're the ones opposing this bill, can give 2 speeches. And once that's over, once each of them has given their 2 speeches, and then the bill can come to the floor once that's exhausted and pass on a majority vote. We only have to have 51 votes. It's just that they skip all of those requirements and say, oh, it takes 60 votes. Well, it only takes 60 votes if you don't make them come to the floor and you don't make the Democrats have to stand up and tell the American people why they're opposed to voter ID and citizenship status to register. So we're going to have to put a lot of pressure on Republicans to make the Democrats have to come to the floor and have an actual talking filibuster. That's what we need, is a talking filibuster. So that's what we need to be talking to our senators about and saying, we want you to go to the floor and work Democrats and Republicans. And the Republicans have got to be willing to stay there and work all night and go to the floor if there's a quorum call, anything like that. We have to have the senators on both sides of the aisle prepared to actually stay up and do some work. That's what we need them to do.
Having worked there for a number of years, I found it, by the time I left, to be a very disgusting and dysfunctional body. And I hate to say that, because I'd like to be the kind of person who would bolster the credibility of our legislative houses, but I just can't do it. I think it's really corrupt. And the bottom line is, if Republicans who have worked so hard, knocking on doors, supporting candidates, losing family and friends because they voted for Donald Trump, if we don't get this issue and a couple of other issues passed in 24 months, when you had the miracle of the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate, then truly, I don't know what the point is of having the Republican Party or going through the motions here if you can't get this done. And this is something, illegal immigration was probably number one for the core Republican constituency, and voter integrity, whether you believe that the elections have been stolen or not, just basic voter integrity that everybody can see is necessary for fairness. You got to get those things passed. They've got to happen.
So I think my message to everybody is, start by calling Senator Thune's office and tell Senator Thune he is the majority leader of the Republican Party in the Senate, and tell him we want a talking filibuster. Make the Democrats come to the floor. Make them tell the American people why they're opposing these principles, these issues that the American people, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, all want this. Make the Democrats come and have to explain why they're opposing it. They'll lie, they'll make things up, but make them have to do that.
Right.
Make them
put them on the record. Yeah,
put them on the record.
It is significant, and I don't want to let our time run out without asking you about Georgia. And I don't know if you're comfortable talking about this. I saw some headlines and they just kind of disappeared about an alleged revelation. I'm not in Georgia. I'm not an investigative reporter anymore, so I can't go and figure this out on my own, that a very significant number of votes had been certified in the 2020 election in Georgia that hypothetically would have changed the end result of the Georgia result in the presidential. Is that true? What's true and what's not true?
It's absolutely true. And I'll try to.
What was the problem?
Well, the problem was it was a completely failed election. All the statutory requirements in Georgia that are in place in order to make sure that the votes are that the vote totals are accurate were completely ignored, certainly in Fulton County. But there's enough blame to go around between the Secretary of State's office and then the Fulton County election office. But I can just give you 2 or 3 bullet points.
Okay.
All ballots, both in person and absentee ballots, had to be in by 7 p.m. on election night, November 3rd of 2020. So if you cast an absentee, state law had to be in by 7 p.m. on November 3rd of 2020. The Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, got on national TV on the Today Show at 7 a.m. the following morning. This is now 12 hours after the deadline. This is now a known number. You have, every county can say, here's how many ballots we have left to count. Mm-hmm. So Brad Raffensperger told the world on the Today Show on November 4th of 2020, we have 94,000 ballots left to count, and President Trump is ahead by 105,000 votes. That's a fact. He did that. He said that. That's what the number was as of the time the polls closed, excuse me, on November the 3rd. Mm-hmm. Fast forward, when the votes were certified, it wasn't 94,000. It was another 300,000 votes, another 300,000 ballots. 148,000 of them came from Fulton County. So half of those ballots that were added to the total, who knows where they came from? And now what you do is when you look at those numbers, you look at the ballots, you don't have any of the proper digital fingerprints that show that those absentee ballots were authentic. And we know that Fulton County, 3 weeks before the election on October 16th, ordered an extra 1 million absentee ballots without envelopes. Well, in order to be an authentic absentee ballot in Georgia, it has to be put in an envelope and either mailed, or they had drop boxes that were not monitored.
Right.
But they still had to be folded and put in an envelope. We kept hearing reports in 2020 of what they called pristine ballots that were said to be absentee ballots, but were not folded. Now that's not possible. That's not a legal absentee ballot. So they don't have the actual digital fingerprint that they're supposed to have. And I'll just mention this last little point. Of those 148,000 roughly absentee ballots that were counted as part of the certified totals from Fulton County, only about 120,000 of those are represented by having voters who were credited with having requested and cast an absentee ballot, leaving 22,535 absentee votes that were counted for whom there are no voters associated with those ballots. So 22,535 votes is double the margin, the final margin between President Trump and Joe Biden, which was 11,779 votes. And that's just one of a myriad of issues and problems that have been documented over the last 5 years and presented to the state election board. President Trump's election contest that I was involved in was never heard by a judge because we never got a judge appointed. None of these complaints, over a dozen complaints documenting different problems with the election in Georgia in 2020, none of those complaints have ever been investigated. None of them have been adjudicated. And people can go to, there's a 263-page report that if you go to our website, it's by researcher Kevin Moncla and another group of researchers. Our website has posted that report. It's at electionintegritynetwork.org. So go and look at that report. It is chapter and verse of everything that happened in Georgia.
Well, this is the problem with elections. It's not this complicated. It shouldn't be this complicated. There are huge numbers of people who are voting, especially in a presidential year, state by state. But we have created, and I think this is deliberate, a series of rules that keep the numbers fungible, so that if someone does want to orchestrate an effort to cheat, it's a lot easier to cheat. And we just shouldn't tolerate that. So I hope people will go check it out. I mean, I think it's important for, it's in the rearview mirror now. I guess there's nothing that can be undone about 2020, but a lot of people were bankrupted and persecuted, I think, for raising legitimate questions. And we need to grapple with that as a people if we want to ever have fair elections going forward. Cleta Mitchell, I appreciate the chance to talk to you.
It's so nice to be able to talk to you, John.
We'll have you back again. Thank you. All right, let's take a quick break. We're back with more in just a moment on the Reid Revolution. Back on the Reid Revolution, and it's time to talk about one of the issues that really motivates Republican voters and the contrast The anti-gun crowd on the Democrat side, they're motivated too. But with Democrats running the state of Virginia, governor's office, Senate, and House, they're going to push through a lot of bad pieces of legislation that I hope will be declared unconstitutional. But the damage that can be done in the interim is problematic. Philip Van Cleve is the head of the Virginia Citizens Defense League, the VCDL, and he joins us now to talk about the legislation that they're tracking. What rises to the level of great concern? There's a lot of stuff that I've seen, Philip.
Yeah, you might want to ask what doesn't rise to the level of great concern with these people. It's amazing. Well, some of the top of our list are things that, like a permit to purchase a firearm. That one is, it sounds real simple, but it's not. Again, the end goal of gun control is civilian disarmament. So they're coming at us from all different directions to make it, well, you got a Second Amendment, but try to buy a gun. We're going to make it hard. Try and find a place where you can shoot or carry the gun. We're going to make that hard. Try to find somebody that wants to sell guns anymore because we can sue them over trivial stuff. And it goes on and on. They're coming from all different angles trying to take away our rights. But one is a permit to purchase. It requires that you get training to buy. This is buying a gun. This isn't carrying it concealed. This is just going in the store, buying a gun, walking out, and going home. You have to have a permit to purchase. You got to get training that's approved by the Department of Criminal Justice Services. So it's probably going to be expensive and very much more than you could possibly need. Then the instructor's got to be the DCJS approved instructor. So you're going to have not too many of those. And then you have to have live fire, which means you got to go to a shooting range and actually shoot. Well, shooting ranges don't allow just any instructor to teach and use their range. They allow instructors that are that they have an agreement with, or maybe are employees of theirs. So like, I'm an instructor, I could teach you how to shoot and everything else, but I don't have an arrangement with the range where I could go out there and use their range to complete the training. So finding somebody to teach you is one thing. Number two, after you do all of that and spend hundreds of dollars on training just to buy a gun, you also have to get fingerprinted. I just went through that again to buy a suppressor. So you got to go down to your local police department when they're open to do it, pay them usually a $10 fee, and then they fingerprint you. And that, for me, it took them a good 10 minutes to get my fingerprints. It's on an electronic machine, and they just had to keep rolling two fingers. They just were having, I don't know why, they had a heck of a time with two fingers.
So it's a deliberate effort to make this really, really complicated, where the average person says, oh my God, this is too much. I'm not going to do it anymore. And the people who are in the business of it decide they're pulling out because the liability is so high and the profit margin completely goes away. And in the end, you wind up with a society where people can't exercise their right because the government has stomped all over their ability to exercise it.
Yeah, forget it if you're poor. You know, you may barely be able to afford a cheap handgun. Now you got to spend $200 or $300 for training and live fire and all.
So
what
happens? What happens to the woman who is being stalked by some whack job guy who says, you know, if you leave me, I'll kill you, or if you won't date me or marry me, I'll kill you, or I've decided that you deserve to die because you haven't paid attention to me. I mean, these are not made up stories.
No.
Everybody consumes these stories all day and all night on these TV programs. We know that that scenario is real, unfortunately. What happens to that lady in Virginia?
Oh, it's worse than I'm glad you brought that up. It's worse because after you go through the steps I defined, they have 45 days to approve your application to get your permit to buy your gun.
She's murdered.
If she's made it 2 months, then she's finally made it. But yeah, a lot of times these things are over in a couple days. You know, the guy finds a girl. Usually they know where the girl lives. They know where she works. They know where her friends are. They know her habits. They know where she shops. So finding and murdering somebody like that isn't all that hard. So in a restraining order, whatever, you know, that's just a piece of paper. So that's an example. That's going to cost lives, guaranteed. There's no doubt in my mind. Then they put in, now if they make it hard to buy the gun, then they want to make it so you can't own certain guns. In this case, a quote unquote assault firearm. And that's just a semi-automatic firearm with a bunch of cosmetic things like a bayonet lug. Have we ever had a drive-by bayoneting? I don't think so. How about a grenade launcher? Ever heard of a grenade launcher being used to rob a bank? No, this is all, it's amazing how stupid this is. But again, they want to disarm us. So stupid fits right into their agenda. They don't care. They just want the guns.
Now, we go through this list. It seems like there's a potent argument just from a safety standpoint for the average citizen: white, black, young, old, male, female, gay, straight, Muslim, Jew, Christian. I mean, I would think everybody would have a little bit of concern that if they get crosswise with somebody who decides they want to kill them, you would want to be able to defend yourself. Are there any votes that will cross over to the sanity caucus and stop this, or are the Democrats determined to push these bills through?
Well, they killed all the pro-gun bills that we had, which really, overall weren't all that loud. But I said, wow, I have an alarm go off in my head here. We're all that strong, and they killed them anyhow. Even minor bills, just making a clarification. Nope, can't have that. Bam, gone. But no, they had one bill that one Democrat voted against the gun control bill. We did have one, but there are so many Democrats in the House that they could afford to throw away a vote. They could throw away 12 votes and still get what the bill passed. Okay. So no, basically it's Democrats equal gun control, Republicans equal no gun control, and it's just that line down the middle.
So you're expecting these bills to pass the House of Delegates, the Senate, and I'm assuming that Abigail Spanberger, despite the fact that she constantly reminds everybody she's a former law enforcement official, no one knows what she actually did, but she's a former law enforcement official. She's going to sign these things into law.
Probably. They've moderated a few of them, but I don't care if they moderate them. If it's a bad bill if it takes away your rights. I don't care if they make it a little sweeter, take away this, grandfather that. Doesn't matter. That's, again, if somebody comes up and holds a gun to your head and says, I want everything in your wallet, and then they say, well, all right, we'll just take half. You've still been robbed. Don't be grateful to them for taking half. They need to go to jail. So in this case, these bills need to die. And it's nice that they're moderating, but our opposition will remain full bore, and we will fight this stuff in court. I've basically going to have the Department of Justice Second Amendment Civil Rights Division on speed dial.
Speed dial. You're going to have to.
They've already warned that they're looking at that. They are watching Virginia, and I think they will get involved. So there's going to be a fight over this.
That's the one good thing, for the people who sat back and didn't vote last year, or were angry for whatever reason, or just thought Donald Trump would carry the day and they didn't have to worry about local governance. Thank God you've got a DOJ that seems aggressive enough to try to protect these rights before they're completely gone. And, anybody who's covered these stories, as I have, it can take a long time for the time a law is passed to the time that you find someone who has standing to challenge it, to getting it in court, having the courts accept it, to litigating the whole thing. And in the meantime, the negative impact on the society is happening all across the state. And I appreciate you standing up. Oh, yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars
to go to court. Yeah. We'd like to think we have a justice system that's accessible to everybody, but if you don't have cash, it's not. Philip Van Cleve, VCDL is the organization, VCDL, Virginia Citizens Defense League. And we'll stay in touch with you as we work our way through this legislative session.
And have people sign up for VA Alert. Thank you, John.
Very good. All right. Let's take a break. We'll be back with more in just a moment on the Reid Revolution. Back at the end of the program, the Reid Revolution on this Wednesday, and we're always joined by producer Dan at the end of the show to kind of talk about things of note. One thing I wanted to mention that I promised Monday or yesterday, I don't know, the days start to run together, is there is a concerted effort, Dan, and you remember when I was at the radio station, the Virginia Taliban is nasty, man. They hate a whole bunch of dead people from 160 years ago. They have bought into this idea that the Civil War was totally about racial annihilation and abuse and oppression of black citizens. That's the only reason for the Civil War in their mind. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That was a part of life back then, and it's not something that I think is good at all. But I don't think that you should eliminate everybody who lived in that era, especially in a leadership position, because of the racial issue any more than in 20 or 30 years ago, 20 or 30 years from now, when I think people no longer have to worry about abortion and they realize what an abomination and a horror show modern abortion is. I would not say you should purge everyone who is pro-abortion. They should own it. They, in hindsight, looking at their careers, all of the Nancy Pelosi and Ralph Northam and Abigail Spanberger and all of these Democrats, I think, should own the fact that they have been for the horror of abortion, and made excuses for it and came up with ways to make it easier to annihilate and eliminate and murder huge numbers of black people in the womb. I think that's shameful, and I hope that they'll have to deal with the shame. But I wouldn't go so far as to remove them from any reference in the public sphere, because as we know in today's society, abortion is not the only issue. So let's show some of the stuff that's happening right now. I mean, it's gone from tearing down statues in 2020 on Monument Avenue in Richmond. I mean, it was a beautiful avenue, but the people who were commemorated there were generals and people who participated in the Confederacy. That's a part of Richmond's history, whether you like it or not. And I think it's a very compelling, interesting story, whether you like it or not, that people deserve to be able to hear. So that was eliminated. Now, Richmond is poor culturally and certainly visually. The place looks like hell if you go down and ride on it. But now there's a movement to rename the house that Robert E. Lee owned. There's already been this effort, successful effort, to take that property and turn it into a national cemetery, which was deliberately designed to make sure the Lees never came back to the house and to insult and offend their family heritage. In Arlington National Cemetery is a wonderful tribute to the people who have fought and died to protect our freedom. So it's really kind of a twisted, sick irony that there are so many people who are exploiting that freedom to try to erase important people from our history. So there is Lee House at the top of Arlington Cemetery. If you've ever been to the Kennedy grave at Arlington Cemetery, you can look directly above that, a couple of hundred yards up, and there is Lee House. That's where the Lee family actually lived. The artifacts are still in there. If you go through the house, you learn about the family, not just because they were the famous Lee family of Virginia, but their relevance to American history, to U.S. history, not just the Confederacy. I mean, it's an important and dramatic place. And, who does Tim Kaine, our former governor, think he is as a U.S. senator, trying to strip the name off of a house that is the Lee House? I don't get it. Who do you think you are to, I mean, it's an Orwellian idea. The names of our national sites should honor individuals whom we can all look up to. I introduced legislation to remove Confederate General Robert E. Lee's name from Arlington House and restore its original title. I mean, first of all, how many times does Tim Kaine get to expose how stupid and historically illiterate he seems to be without anybody kind of lashing out at him? I mean, he's talked about religious freedom in a way in one of these committee hearings lately that made me realize he really doesn't understand how the country was founded and upon the principles the country was founded, how that should translate to today. And now he wants to remove the name of Lee from the house where they lived. What kind of a dunce are you? This is the house where they lived. I mean, I'm sorry if you don't like it. You don't have to go there. You don't have to have a DNC fundraiser there. You don't have to bring your kids there. You don't have to celebrate it, but it is what it is. And whether you like it or not, Senator, former governor, I mean, God, who knew that you were this vicious and stupid at the same time? What you don't get to just rewrite the history here. We can talk about it. I'm happy to do that. But this is a Taliban mindset, Dan, and it's really concerning that it's back full force these days.
Well, maybe after Tim Kaine's gone, we'll just rename Tim Kaine's place. You could name it Popsicle Land or something. I don't know.
Look, Tim Kaine he doesn't think that everybody remembers. His house in Richmond is on Confederate Lane. And no one made a big deal out of it. It's like, you bought a house. If the Confederacy was that upsetting to you, why did you buy a house on Confederate Lane? But you did, and no one said anything about it. No one beat you up about it. I mean, it is what it is. That was the name of the street. Now they've renamed the street now because everybody's joining the Virginia Taliban to rename everything. But I mean, he is vulnerable. If you were that offended by the Confederacy, and you really weren't, and this is crass politics, playing games, then would you have bought a house on Confederate Lane? No. Just like when I was looking for an apartment in New York, I didn't want to live in the little area called Clinton. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to live in Chelsea because in my head, Chelsea is Chelsea Clinton. And I just don't like, I don't hate her. I just don't want to constantly be reminded of the Clintons. I don't like the Clintons. I don't want to have anything to do with them. Now that's petty and that's little. And I'm not saying that it's the same thing as the Confederacy because it's not, but people react in different ways. So you choose. I chose not to get an apartment in those two places because I didn't want to be filling out forms that constantly referred to that name that I don't like. I mean, maybe you can call me a name for it or look down on me, but I made that choice myself. I didn't go around demanding that anybody else change in order to accommodate me. And it's just really weird that a former governor, a U.S. senator would be this hostile. 160 some years after the Civil War? What, are you trying to refight the Civil War? Do you think that helps anybody? You're a dunce for doing that. You're historically illiterate and you're not smart in the contemporary sense if this is the fight you're picking with all the other stuff that we've got to deal with. And I'm kind of tired of it. Got to call it out.
Yeah. Again, like you, I suppose I don't really want to relitigate this here and now, but I mean, did the Lee family ever get any money for that property or anything?
When it was taken?
Yeah. Was it?
I mean, it was a war. You take property. Yeah. I'm really not even upset about that. It's a war. Bad things happen. Unfair things happen. People lose things. People lost their lives. A lot of Southerners lost their property. I'm not really interested in relitigating it or bemoaning it. I'm not interested in reparations for the people who may or may not have been wrong. I'm not interested in that. And it's so weird that Democrats are obsessed with it. They're obsessed with anything that has to do with the Civil War. It's even odder to me that people who are not from the South, who talk so much about colonialism, how evil colonialism is and how we need to understand other cultures and we need to stop and be quiet and understand the history of other countries and other people and not assert that we're right. They sure as hell don't have that attitude when they move from New York or Pennsylvania or New Jersey to Virginia and then don't think twice about saying, oh, well, that statue that's been here for 130 years has to come down because I personally don't like it. To hell with you. Seriously. Who do you think you are? You're total hypocrites. You act like the United States is wrong and that Western civilization is wrong for colonialism, but then in essence, you have the exact same attitude on steroids about something that's a century old when you come to move to the South. I mean, I'm happy to have a neighbor from Long Island. I'm not happy to have a neighbor from Long Island who constantly says that everybody in my ancestral tree is a bigot, a racist, and a horrible person. Now, I'm not interested in your critique of my dead family members. And I'm sure as hell not interested in you trying to micromanage the society that we all have inherited here. You're welcome to come, but you're not welcome to recreate it in your vision. And I'm going to call you a hypocrite to your face about it, whether it's Tim Kaine or Mark Warner, both of whom are imports to Virginia, not Virginians, or whether it's some of these other people who've come here. Welcome to Virginia. Now, don't assert yourself that you get to decide what's right and wrong about everything from the past. You can have a role in what's happening now, but we're not going to tolerate your perception of things from 150 years ago. I raise hell about it.
The question before was a rhetorical one. Obviously, I know that they didn't get any money for their estate taken during the course of the Civil War. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's not like the government got this land, paid for it, and oh, we now have the acquired rights to this through any sort of contractual agreement. To do this is almost like adding insult to injury. It's
it's multiple insults.
Can't you at least leave the name intact if you're going to take it anyway?
And I think that's not the best argument. It's certainly an argument. The real thing here is this is an individual and a family who are, whether anybody likes it or not, the truth is they're a very integral part of the founding of the country and the first 100 years of the country, including the Civil War. And it would behoove us, I think, to study these people with curiosity rather than with condemnation, if we'd like to avoid the same mistakes in our own time that caused hundreds of thousands of people to be slaughtered during the first American Civil War. And, some people are very angry with me when I say this. I think we're close to another Civil War, to be honest with you. I don't want that to happen. And that's one reason I'm being so hostile about this type of behavior from our elected officials. I think it is anti-intellectual and it is very unwise to focus on things like this from the past instead of ensuring that the future is one where there is prosperity that everyone gets a chance to participate in. And dealing with statues and names and street names, I promise you, doesn't help anybody. Not one little black kid who's failing out of school because they can't read in downtown Richmond who is doing any better today because somebody wrecked one of the biggest tourist attractions in Richmond. That is not racial reconciliation. That's not even racial revenge. It's stupid. And it's harmful to the culture, and it doesn't help the people that you claim you care so much about. All right, I don't want to miss the opportunity to talk about this. Had you ever heard of this Natasha Owens lady who's a musician?
Not before a few weeks ago, no.
Well, I don't think we gave her the appropriate credit when we played this song. Remember this? The Somali Waltz, when we discovered that, these Somalians in Minnesota, it appears, we're just bilking the government of millions and millions of dollars. I thought this was very clever, too. She used AI for this song, but I guess she's really singing in this Natasha Owens lady. And it's pretty potent political commentary in the form of music that points out this abuse from the Democrats and the Somalians in Minnesota. Yeah. Plus, it's a pretty clever little song, I think. Yeah. We played it about 2 weeks ago. I thought and I didn't realize who she was. Well, now, again, at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep, I've just got to force myself to go to sleep, but I can't. So too many things on my mind, too many bad things happening. And I'm looking and I find the next Natasha Owens video, which calls out the hypocrisy of a lot of artists, but in particular, Bruce Springsteen, who is he a billionaire? He's probably close to a billionaire, I would think, if he's managed his money well at all. all the decades that he's been one of the top performers in America and probably pretty high up there around the world. Here's this song criticizing Bruce Springsteen because he tries to pretend he's a kind of a man of the people, which I think is questionable, but it's always from the left. No concern for other people and what they go through. And maybe this is the reason conservatives have the positions they do on immigration and otherwise. Listen, I thought it was a really clever song.
1.1 to 1.2 billion as of 2025.
Is that what he has?
Bruce Springsteen net worth. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Real man of the people.
All right. Well, here's the song.
I used to believe you sang for me in those glory days of old. Where is your song for justice? Where is your song for the working man? I was born in the USA and you spill my promised land. You preach from your mansion, but you don't know the cost. I thank God you're not the boss. What about Lake and Riley? Is Charlie too hard to say? What about when you took your shot at the one you called king? Where is your song for justice? Where is your song for working man? I was born in the USA and you spit on my promised land. You preach from your mansion, but you don't know the cost. I thank God you're not the boss.
It's a heck of a song. It's actually a pretty good song, I think. I don't know whether she writes this stuff herself or whether that's AI. Clearly the video is done with AI, but that's a pretty potent political pushback message against Bruce Springsteen in particular, but all of these left-wing wackos who never seem to have any concern about conservatives or regular people who are abused or harmed or murdered or raped or disenfranchised in society. It's always a message from them from the leftist Marxist perspective. And I've been over it for decades now. But, you know, this is the great thing about the internet. There are a lot of bad things about the internet. Natasha Owens, you should look her up. She's got a whole bunch of songs. I guess she's a Christian singer. But maybe this will be her, I mean, who am I to say a breakthrough moment, but where mainstream America finds out about her. I'm glad that she's pushing back on these people.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of really interesting songs, and having become, I guess we could call myself of sorts the in-house composer for the Reid Revolution. I'm a little familiar with how this works now. It really is amazing what AI is helping to facilitate. The work that I did to produce the theme music and the bumper music for this show was something that pre-AI would have taken me days, if not a couple of weeks, to put together, just fine-tuning myself. And now you just sort of throw it into an AI generator for orchestration and out it pops.
The video stuff, I can tell you, the two songs that we just saw, that would have been, I mean, $1 million to have a crew, to scout the sites, to figure it out, to put it together, to edit it, plus the musical. I mean, this is a great moment if you're a conservative to learn these skills so that you can compete in pop culture. You no longer have to wait for someone to be hired by some left-wing wacko in Hollywood to give your people permission to express an opinion. You now, if you just learn this, and this is what I'm trying to do, if you learn this, you'll be able to share your message in a compelling way that rivals what the leftists have owned for decades. And I think that's pretty important. Natasha Owens is the name of the musician. Hey, producer Dan, reach out and see if maybe she'll come on the podcast. That would be great.
Yeah, ready to put a bow on this one for today there, boss?
That's it. Yeah, make sure you give us a like and a follow or a review on both of our Facebook pages. Really be helpful if you give us a follow on both of them, the John Reid Revolution with John Reid and the Reid Revolution. You can send us a note at thereidrevolution@gmail.com if you've got suggestions for guests or you'd like to advertise. That's going to do it for us. See you back here tomorrow morning on the Reid Revolution.